Thank you for listening to the Dog Trainers Podcast, a podcast created by dog trainers for dog trainers, or anyone who's ever fallen in love with man's best friend.
That point right there, the ability to articulate in a way that lands and not be overly wordy and annoyingly like clinical and anything like that. That's always what I've like found from my own perspective anyway, of being like just the thing that you do that people can't do. I've always thought that that's like among everything else, don't get me wrong, but like that's something that makes Sean O'Shea truly special to me, at least, you know. And I think that I know exactly what you're saying about like people have a technical skill set, but teaching and explaining is a whole different skill set, kind of like a business, right? I tell people all the time, like training dogs and running a dog training business are not the same thing. And I liken to just whatever examples I have, like in my personal life, you know, like a big I'm a big sports guy. I'm a big like jiu-jitsu guy. And I'm lucky, like here in Phoenix, there are some amazing guys, like a huge lineage in their belts and all that good stuff. But sometimes you can find a guy with all of the accolade, all of the trophies and everything in the world, and they just don't explain things right. You know, they'll have a guy in one position and they'll make sounds like, okay, so you're here, and then boom. And then now the guy's flipped over. And you're like, yeah, but what is boom? You know, I didn't see what you saw. I'm not a black belt. Like I'm not, you know. So you have definitely that way about explaining things. And I can't imagine this book not being just as like sent out to owners. I think it would be weird if they didn't. I would imagine, like, I can kind of see the logistical issue. Like, do you really expect owners to read 2 books now instead of 1 and all that good stuff?
Right. Yeah.
I wonder if you guys have plans in the future, maybe for like a Cliff Notes, like middle ground, like, you know, or something.
But good question. Yeah.
I would like to see it both. If when you do the whole 3 volumes, I'd like you to put them in sections, like bullshit that humans do. What, like being insecure with your dog. Well, so that way as a trainer, I could be like, I'm going to send this to my owner because that's what she needs. Right. Yeah.
Right.
You're like, why did you buy me a book saying bullshit that owners do? Like, what are you saying?
This is hurtful. This is hurtful. Please.
Yeah. No, that's. I keep going, Mariano.
No, you're good. So anyway, let me shift gears a little bit. So the second book, and we've already talked about the possibilities of the third book at some point in the future and what that may look like. Yeah. And again, you've got all the supplemental stuff. The DVDs were really good. The prong collar one is cool. The e-collar, I love the how you guys managed to use the GoPro to see the e-collar. And I love the little like boop, boop sound that you would use for pressure on, pressure off. Yeah. And that was really creative. And what's next for TGD?
Good question. We're, you know, like everybody else, trying to battle everything going on with 2020.
Right.
So there's no doubt that business is slower than usual. So we're trying to make sure we keep things lean and mean and doing everything we can to keep promoting and keep things healthy. And as of right now, we're hanging tough. I mean, there were some worrying moments back in like March, April, May, where it was
right when everything shut down,
hanging by a thread. And so now we're just really working on trying to keep moving forward, and fingers crossed that things go back to some kind of I don't want to say normal or mellow, but that we get to a place where commerce and people trusting spending money and feel safe to do that is something that comes back. We've got clients and we've got shadow programs, we've got seminars, and we've got Black Friday coming up. So we're trying to, like, you know, leverage all of the different things that we can use. Mm-hmm. And then meanwhile, just be safe and not make any stupid decisions. And like the budgets, typically when we do the book releases or DVDs, we spend a pretty decent budget on promotion, as far as like creating really like pretty snazzy kind of promotional stuff. And so I think we're going to go super ghetto and try and find like a really kind of grassroots way of doing it, and see how that goes. So
you let us know how we can help that too. I mean, we would love nothing more, you know. So if there's little promotions and things that you can send us that we can then push out on our end. We were also planning on cutting up, like, of course, editing the entirety of the podcast, putting that up, but then kind of Joe Rogan style, cutting up certain clips here and there and putting those up in different places and see if we can help generate some of that,
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, I was just going to say something that, and I try and post it on the T3 VIP page for because a lot of times the questions come up about content creation.
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned this briefly earlier, but I think it's something that doesn't get looked at nearly deeply enough. And I think it's why so many dog trainers end up struggling creating content, or sound like other dog trainers. Are you still around? Leaving session in 42 seconds. Yes, I'm still here. Hang on a second. They're trying to get rid of me.
Uh-oh.
Yep, you still here? I'm still here.
Just move your mouse. Yeah.
Okay. Wow. This is that got scary for a second. Okay. And what I try and tell people, and I think they struggle with it because they want to be so immersed in the dog world. They want to know every fucking protocol, every like fancy pants thing, all the terminology. And it's like, man, if people saw what I studied every day, I study this much. There's maybe one or two people I study dog training wise. And that doesn't mean that I'm not thinking about dogs and how to make things better. It just means that I'm trying to pull from a much wider space of information. And what I find is that when I put them together, and if something just lands just right, and I manage to kind of find that right mix, it grabs people in a novel way. And then they're like, "Oh, that's so cool!" And it's talking about kids, and it's talking about relationships, and I'm like, yes. And people will say oftentimes, this sounds like it's talking about kids, and I'm like, that's because I'm never just talking about dogs.
Right.
Right.
And so I really try and encourage people to like push out. You have to be careful if you push stuff and include stuff that doesn't really jibe and feels like you're hardcore pushing the agenda. I think that can be problematic. But if you're smart and you try and look out for, and that doesn't mean be watered down, but if you're smart and you figure out, okay, how can I just posted up a post that had a little bit to do with dysfunctional relationships and then wrapped up with politics. And I rarely post anything about politics. And one of the first comments was, just like, I really don't like when you post about dogs or post anything but dogs. Right. And so I just, it's like, I'm sorry, but I'm never going to be that. The thing you like about me is the fact that I don't do that. You just you don't realize it. You think that it's so cool what you're saying about dogs, but you don't realize that I pulled that from Milton Friedman or this economist or this professor, and then put it together and found a weird kind of overlap or parallel. And then and I know we talked about this already a little bit, but I just don't think enough people look at how they can take a broader view of the world and then find the parallels with dog training and make it really fascinating and unique for people.
Right.
So,
that's one thing that I really loved about dog training. And I've been mentoring dog trainers for out of the 12 years I've been doing this, for at least 8 of those years. Right. And what I've noticed is there's such a huge opportunity for self-growth as a dog trainer, because there are those certain dogs that like, I don't know how to handle this dog. Well, it's because there's something in you that you need to handle, whether it's patience or structure or accountability or whatever it might be. Yeah. And a lot of the trainers that I mentor are early 20s, mid 20s, and that's the toughest part of youth, right? Is those ages, right?
Yeah.
And there's just this beautiful part of what dog training can provide as far as personal growth, self-growth, and I think the only way one can actually truly grow as a dog trainer, as an entrepreneur, as a business person, is you have to take that wider lens view of things and see how everything works together. Because, as a child of ADD myself, I'm really good at honing in on something and dissecting the shit out of that if I'm obsessed on it. But then I have to pull back my lens sometimes, and I have to be like, that's the same thing in this, and in finance, and this and this and that. And then what happens is just you create this schematic of the world that's no longer scary, because it's true. If it's true in dog training, it's true in real life.
Right.
If it's true with my dog, it's true with me. Right. And so that universal truth that you bring up so eloquently in your writing and your posts and stuff like that, I love interviewing trainers and being like, man, we got so much in common. You know what I mean? I love it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm hoping that more and more trainers start to kind of have the intellectual curiosity and the courage to go out and start looking for things. And of course, you have to be careful. You say dumb things, you're going to get penalized. But
of course,
try and put some things together that people haven't heard the same way, and be prepared to write a lot of bad posts for a long time until you get to some better posts. Like I could put up some posts right now that would, curl your hair. So it's just the way it is. So it certainly wasn't always like this, and I'm really proud to be in a spot where I think we've done some good work, better than the last one, and I'm crossing fingers that it's received in the same way.
Right. I want to ask you a question and change the subject a little bit. And this is something we do with every single one of our special guests. We talk about dog training is art all the time, the art of dog training. And the reason we kind of call it art is because, as you mentioned, there's not a lot of rules on it. There's not a lot of, there's so many, it's such a widespread spectrum of ideas. And so we proposed this to Tyler Muto, Michael Ellis, Tom Davis, and we asked them, okay, and some of our other guests, Melissa, Vanessa, and we said, okay, if you were to look at, you are an artist as a dog trainer, right? You're the human. And we were to look at dog training as an art form. Okay, what's your canvas? What's your paint palette? What's your paintbrush? What's your this? What's your that? Right? I'm just thinking of everything I saw in a Bob Ross video, right? And so we asked Michael Ellis. We said, we asked Tyler Muto. We said, okay, so what is the spectrum of colors? He goes, your understanding of how things learn stuff, right? And your classical conditioning, your operant conditioning, your schedules, all that stuff. But even to put it more of a simple way, how do things learn stuff? Because you have to understand learning theory.
Yeah.
Michael Ellis said, technical skill. You have to put in the reps. You have to put in the practice. And that would be a tool that an artist needs in his toolbox, is the technical skill. And we asked Melissa and Vanessa from Ecuador. They said honesty. You need to have honesty, and you need to tell people, you have to be honest and don't sugarcoat shit. Right. If I were to ask you, Sean O'Shea, this toolbox, we're artists. What is it, do you think, that's really, really important in dog training that you would add to this artist toolbox?
Oh, man, tough question. For one, I'd say if I look at what I try and share with my team, is an incredible focus on creativity and rules and blueprints that we have that we're absolutely ready to augment, break, toss out the window, right? So we've got a blueprint that we know works really, really well, and we will change and break our rules in that split second, depending on the dog. So,
like it's okay to change your mind.
I tell people with like shadows, I will literally tell them, okay, so do this, and then when I see a different response from the dog, I will tell them, forget what I just said. This is absolutely not what the dog needs. I'm going to move in a different direction with the dog like this. And so I look at demeanor. I look heavily, and I don't hear a lot of folks talk about this, but I look at personality and I look at demeanor, rather than breed, rather than drive, rather all that than that stuff. And I'm looking for what is your attitude underneath all of this? Because if I can read your attitude, I can really help serve you. And what I mean by that is that if you are a pushy, bratty, strong-willed dog, then you're going to need something different from me to serve you, to be able to help move you in a different direction. If you're a cupcake dog, I absolutely have to pivot that a million% in order to best serve that dog, not overwhelm that dog, not freak that dog out, and get that dog to feel confident and comfortable.